Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna. For those of you who are new here, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. In today's video, I'll be doing Doodle Robot's Crayola Colors of the World Challenge, as well as showing you how I use gel crayons. And if that is of interest to you, please stay tuned. All right, so this intro might be a little chatty, so I actually will be segmenting this by way of timestamps. It'll be the intro, it'll be the gel crayon portion, and then it'll be the Crayola Colors of the World portion. I don't know that I'll be finishing this with you guys today, but we can at least get a start to it. So a couple of days ago, I saw a video by Doodle that she was challenging herself to use mostly Crayola Colors of the World, and she created a challenge, but she only tagged Pixie and myself because she knew we already had these products. So she didn't want people to go out and buy things just to play the challenge. So if you have any of the Crayola Colors of the World line by way of the markers or the pencils, or I think there's even crayons, then consider yourself tagged. But in her video, she used mostly Crayola products, but she did introduce a few more. So I'm going to be introducing some things as well, just because it helps me with filming purposes, so I can just do one video to get two things across. I will be working out of this Christina McAllister's Magical Beauties Book 2. I do have some buddy colors in here with my friends Deb, Pixie, and Poet, but I'll show you why I ultimately chose a different page. So this is one of the pages that is a buddy color, but this one I see using a very monotone palette. I'm thinking either pinks or reds, or monochrome, not monotone. And for my purposes, because of that, one, I didn't think it would look striking because I did have specific colors in mind, but also the grayscale in here, I didn't want to cover up the black, and then I don't know that it would be interesting enough to use my gel crayon method on the back here. So this I decided not to do. And same with this one. I do have a specific color palette in mind, and I didn't think the gel crayons that I have and the method that I have would work towards that, because I don't want to get rid of that black. If anything, I might want to try to make it a little bit more inky. And with the method that I use, and I'll actually be showing you too, I don't know that I'd be able to get that effect on here. So what I did decide to do is this page right here. And that's because the colors that I'll be using by way of the Crayola's Colors of the World, I think would look well on here. There's a ton of grayscale, and I find that the method, the first of the two methods I'm going to show you, work really well on that. And it's also a very interesting page. Plus it's fall. I mean, it's fall for you guys. I live in Hawaii. We don't actually really get that. All right, so I think that's it for the intro. We're actually going to go into the gel crayon demonstration. Now, I don't know if any of this is going to bleed. This is just Amazon paper. It's not the thickest, but I always put a buffer page, or at least I try to, whenever I'm working in things. Okay, so I do have 3 different kinds of gel crayons, and it's the super crayons here, gel crayons, and that I purchased from Amazon. This I purchased secondhand from my friend Poet when she was doing one of her D-stashes, and so this is Tim Holtz Distress Crayons. And then I have these. They're marketed as soft gel highlighters for Bibles, but they are essentially gel crayons, and I bought them because I liked the colorway. So I thought they were just really pretty. And in fact, we're going to be using some of this today. So we're going to take out these 3 for now. and I'll show you how one of the methods, and the method that I used in my Ukuko books in my recent completed pages, because I just find it the easiest. So if you can see, there are 3 greens in that set, and I'm actually going to use this lightest one. Now I don't swatch anything, so we'll see how this comes out, and I'm just going to directly color it on here. I'd like to get a nice even coverage. It is much smoother than an actual crayon. But I'm not going to go too heavy-handed. I can always come back. But the entire background I'm going to do in this. Now I do know from working in the Ukuko book that my alcohol markers will work on top of this once I smudge it out. I don't know if the Crayolas will, so we're going to need to be a little mindful of that. I don't know what the formulation is in here, but again, as you can see, it goes on really easily. It's really soft. It actually feels a little weird. Not bad weird, just weird. But I do want to get a somewhat even coat and figure out what belongs to what. And the reason I like this on grayscale is because I can get a lot of coverage. It isn't very opaque. It isn't very translucent, but you can see what's underneath very easy. And I like that it's quick. So if it's something like this where it's detailed, or if there's a lot of background that I just don't want to have to deal with, then it lets me put a lot of coverage down on the page with very minimal effort. Plus it also doesn't use much of the crayon. Now, when I bought my Distress inks, I had bought a set of these. I don't even know what they're called, but unlike this right here, which I do like with my Tim Holtz Distress ink, I found that this thing works a lot better because this is a lot firmer, and because I'm really just buffing this out and moving it so that it's more in a more even coat, I just find this better, and I'm glad because I didn't really find anything else I could use these things for. So you just take off the little thing here, and I had bought a set of refills and then one of these, and I've used these before. This is close enough in color to me. I don't know if anything's going to transfer, but honestly, if it does, I don't really care. And then I'm just going to slowly just kind of smush it in by way of circles. And I do need to hold this down because I don't want the page to buckle or kind of fold in on itself. And as you can see, just doing that right there, it gives you a nice even coat. There is some different saturations there, but it looks like I've done a lot more work than I actually have. Now, because the color will transfer over, I do kind of want to put it on its edge and use the side there, but again, I'm not too concerned about color coming into this because honestly, I don't usually concern myself with that kind of stuff. I don't know if I will be using alcohol markers when it comes to skin pages. That is my medium, or my defaulted medium. But we shall see, because I'm thinking maybe I could do a layer of gel crayons down and then maybe do some highlights with the Crayolas, because again, it's supposed to be about that. As you can see, there's some green coming on her face, but I'm not going to be concerned about this. Now, if you have one of these firmer buffer things that's smaller, then you definitely could get into the this easier by way of the small areas. And again, it's just color. It's not going to hurt anything. And so I'm just going to kind of move it out and kind of spread it out. If I wanted to, I could come back into these areas that are splotchy, but again, I kind of like that model look because it looks like more work has been done to it. If you're looking for a more even coat, then what you might want to do is put more of an even coat down. This works perfectly for my purposes. And I haven't noticed that this transfers over, but if that's a concern of yours, you might want to seal it. I can't think of any pages that I've done in a double-sided book with this particular method. But again, if you're concerned about that, you may just want to put a barrier or something in between your pages if you worry it's going to transfer. So that already brings a lot of color in. So let me show you the second way that I generally use these gel crayons. All right, so I've got just an empty tin. I did keep these when I ordered my Holbeins. I've got 2 sets of these 12, and for Holbein purposes, that's sufficient for me because these are rather pricey. But I like the tin because it's portable. I can stick it up into my shelf, and it gives me sort of a palette. Now, this is all gel crayon that I've used before. I don't like to waste my products, so you can reactivate it with some water, but we're going to use this right here just so I can show you. I'm just going to scribble it on here. You could use anything with a slick surface. I know people buy those Caran d'Ache palettes, but that's actually rougher. I don't like the idea of that one because one, it stains, and this one I can just wipe up. But also it looks like it wastes product, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not made of money. So even though I've got a lot of product, I like to think that I'm using it to the best of my ability. But I just wanted to show you how I use this. And I just use I just grabbed the first Arteza water brush that I could find. Make sure it's clean. There's enough water in here for my purposes. And then I'm just going to add some water. And let's just, oh no, that's much too light. Okay, well, then let's smush these together and put it over here. Now this paper is not primed with anything, and so there will be a little bit of buckling. That sort of moving it around method is actually my preferred method because it just goes a lot faster. But this is another way that you can use your product. If you wanted to, you could also go directly onto the stick with your paintbrush, and then you'd actually get a heavier concentration of color. And let me just show you guys that. Now, I don't know how comparable these are to Neocolors 2, which I also really enjoy. The feeling of it in my hand does feel different. This does feel softer, but I don't know if that's just because that's more of an expensive formulation or what. I can't speak to, because I have some, but I can't speak to the formulation aspect of it. And to be honest, I like it better on the palette than directly from here. But those are the 2 methods that I use. Again, I might come in here. In fact, let's do that. It's not going to run, so I can move that to the side. Let's actually put some color down for her face. Now, obviously I have the Crayola Colors of the world, but I don't like streakiness. And I know specifically Poet has a couple of videos now, the one she just did, and then another one specifically to it, where she talks about how you can use water-based markers and not get the streakiness or sort of minimize the streakiness. But that takes a lot of patience, and I have very little of that. And so we'll put a color down. And this one might actually have been better if I'd done the wet method, but too late. And I'm going to change this. buff this out. Now I'm definitely going to have to try this method on something that is not either as heavily grayscaled or grayscaled at all, because I'm not going to lie, that actually is a really nice finish, but I don't know if it's because there's grayscale on the page, so it just sort of lends itself to it. But that actually was really nice and went down really nicely. Okay, so now let's test some of the Crayola colors. This isn't the entire set because I think there's like 24, but the rest I took to work. So we're just going to use what I have in here, which I have kept here at home. And let's see how this moves on top of, oh, okay. Actually, that doesn't move that bad. Because I was worried that if there was like a lot of wax, that this would just sit weirdly on top. But no, I actually think that looks pretty decent. And it's not a wet medium, these crayons. And so I don't know that I necessarily would need to wait any length of time before attempting this. Huh, that's nice. And maybe because I do have the gel below it, but I'm not feeling that anything's pilling where I'm tearing up the paper. And you guys saw I didn't really let this dry for very long. Okay, well that's interesting. So let's put some things in her face. None of these are swatched out as well, so we're just gonna get what we get. This doesn't have a lot of pigment, but I also don't know if it's just because it's dry. Oh, but that's still very pretty. Let's add some of these tattoo elements. All right, now I'm curious to see if it is because of the layer of gel crayon that these seem to go on nicer than I had anticipated. So when I'm done with this piece, we'll do something up here with just the marker. I need to remember that I use that one for the rest of the face tattoos. So this doesn't seem to have any color on it, so it'd be a good tester. So let's do something light in here. I'm not feeling, and I don't know if you know what I mean, but a lot of times when I use water-based markers, if you do that kind of scrubbing method, eventually it's going to feel like you're eating up the paper. I don't feel that. And again, it could be because there is grayscale on that part. So let's, and then there's ink on that part. So maybe that protects or acts as a barrier. I'm not sure. But even on that whiter section, I don't really feel like it's chewing up the paper. That's interesting. I don't generally color with water-based markers on single-sided pages because in my mind there's no reason to. That's why I have a ton of permanent and alcohol markers. But that is interesting. Okay, so, and then another way you could use these is the same as the gel crayons. Let's just use this little spot up here because there doesn't seem to be a lot of color there. And you can just kind of color these on. And I use this because the surface is slick. So it won't, if it does stain, it won't stain a lot. We'll use another one. Oh, there might have been some color left on this. Are we going to care? We are not. And let's just pick something small to color. Let's do these spiky things. And I like having the ability to, I don't know that I would necessarily do this, but I like that I can use my mediums in a little bit of different ways, just with a different application, because then if I'm having a pain in my hand day, I can still color and get into some of my products, but I can do it in a method that's not going to hurt me. So let's see if we can just kind of add some interest. I don't know that I want to color a ton of the aspects in this background, but it does add a little bit of visual interest. And let's actually try one more experiment. And that would be, let's put this on the page. Is there anything else that looks like that? No. And activate with water. Oh, well, it would have helped if I cleaned the brush. All right, so let's try that experiment again where I'm not just completely covering it up. Right, I'm pulling out yet another color. And let's color all of these things and then activate it with water. And some of you might be cringing right now because it is just been an experimental page, but that's how I truly color. So I don't test things beforehand. I just kind of go with it. If it works, fantastic. And if it doesn't, well, I'll have a completed page. So, you know, there's pluses and minuses. And this is more of that just diverse B. I mean, it's all going to coordinate because it all came together in the single pack. And let's just see if we can move this around. And the effect that it gives us. This definitely doesn't smooth it out, I think, as nicely as either putting it on a separate palette or just buffing it in. But it does move the product around and you can get a kind of a mottled look, which I'm not hating. And as you can see, it does move quite easily. If you're looking to get rid of all the white space, you may need to let this method dry completely and then do another coat on top of it. If anything, I might do some highlighting with some of the Crayola browns, but otherwise, I actually don't mind that look at all. But yeah, I think that gives you an idea of how to use the gel crayons as a background. Again, I haven't tested this with things that are not Amazon paper and not grayscaled, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that. But I find for my grayscale, and I can show you a page in just a minute, that it actually works really well because I'm adding a translucent layer of color, but you can still see some of the texture on the page itself. Now this is a page from Ikuko's Surreal Fantasy that I use that method. So with some of the these right here, I just put that same layer on the bottom of it, and then a green on the top here, and then kind of buff that out so you can see the texture that was already on the page. Let me show you this uncolored, which is this right here. So you can see that texture was already there, but just by adding the gel crayon, even though this looks like it's uncolorable because it does seem so dark, you actually can get quite a bit of different tones because of the grayscale. I actually really love that effect. Another one that I use that on is this one right here. So I used some of those Diversby ones in the green sections here, and then in the pink sections here with this one, I believe. And then I went in with some alcohol markers on top just to add in a little bit of depth of the shadow as well as that right there. And then I did the same thing here. So this uses a yellow gel crayon on the back of it. And that's the first thing that I do because I can always add layers on top. I wouldn't actually do all of the coloring and then add the gel crayon just because I think it would mess up all the different finishes. I did the same thing in here. Tried to do some layering on top and then activating it by water. I don't mind it, but I certainly like that more. It's flat and yet there's different tones. I prefer that to this that looks a bit scratchy. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think I use that also in here. Again, you can see it covers, or it can cover, a lot of big areas, and generally when I'm doing my coloring, I don't like coloring big areas. So this just gets a lot of color on the page with very minimal effort. All right, guys, well, it was a bit of a chaotic video just because we were testing some things out together. You will see this completed page once I do my September completed pages videos. And if that's like any of the previous months, it's probably going to go up towards the middle of October. So I always do it the following month, usually in the middle of that following month. But yeah, I think that is a good start to it, and I'm interested to see how this will end up. All right, guys, well, that's it for me for now. And as always, aloha.